The NC State Wolfpack are up now, and yes, that is Virginia Cavalier football footage before you. This is to highlight Brennan Armstrong, who's going to be integral to the success for the Wolfpack this year. But let's get started with the departures for the Wolfpack. Quarterback Devin Leary, he transferred to Kentucky after his injury last year. And that was sort of the start of the woes that the Wolfpack had offensively in the second half of the season. You know, they had to play 4 different quarterbacks. Devin Leary, obviously, MJ Morris, Jack Chambers, and Ben Finley. And it caused some struggles for them throughout the season last year. You know, they went 8-5. They lost in the bowl game to Maryland. And it was overall a disappointing year for what they were expected to do. You know, they started the season ranked number 13 nationally, and people thought they were legitimate contenders for at least the ACC crown, and beyond that, the college football playoff. But also gone is linebackers Drake Thomas and Isaiah Moore. They were big parts of the defense last year. The only defense to allow 30 points or less in all of Division I, which was very impressive. And wide receiver Thayer Thomas is gone. In addition to that, Devin Carter is gone. And so those 2 wideouts being gone are a concern. But arrivals, as I said, Brennan Armstrong, very key to the Wolfpack's success on offense. He comes in, you know, he had that really good season in 2021 where he scored 41 touchdowns with his arm and his legs. So he's definitely a versatile quarterback. He can run when he needs to, but, you know, he's one of those mobile quarterbacks that's always looking to throw first. He's not a run-first mobile quarterback. Wide receiver Bradley Rosner. And this goes, he also transfers in. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier about the receivers. You know, you need that outside depth. You need someone to step up in that wide receiver room. And someone like Rosner, who has a lot of experience. This is his 8th year of college football, which is kind of crazy to think about. You know, he had some injuries, and, you know, he gets the COVID year as everyone else does. So a lot of experience coming from him at the wide receiver position, which is good. You know, he can train. He's almost like a second coach where he can train up guys. And then offensive coordinator Robert Nene comes in from Syracuse. But he also was at Virginia when Brennan Armstrong was there. And his air raid style attack is something that, you know, the Wolfpack, they haven't seen. They're used to a kind of pro-style balance attack, but it looks like the Wolfpack will be throwing a lot more than they usually do this season, which a lot of state fans seem to be excited about from what I hear from them. And you've got key returners, you know, Trent Penix, Peyton Wilson, Aiden White. Those are all guys that are going to be big. Peyton Wilson and Aiden White on the defensive side. Trent Penix, if he can stay healthy, you know, I think he has a legitimate shot to win the Mackey Award if Robert Nene uses him like he's used his tight ends before. They've put up a lot of numbers with touchdowns and yards just because of the design that they have within his scheme and his play calling. So I would look for Trent Penix to have a really big year this year, as long as he, again, doesn't get hurt. But the strengths, I would say linebacker. You know, a lot of linebackers in NC State's room that are still there have gotten a lot of playing experience from this past year with some of the injuries that they had, and the year before where they also had injury problems. And so you have a lot of guys that have had some experience just rotating in and out. And now they're going to be getting the starting job. And that's kind of the same thing with the secondary. The secondary has also had some injury problems in the past couple of years, and that's had to call on these guys that didn't have experience before to get in and go through some battles one-on-one on the outside. And so I think with those two position groups, they won't be as good as they were last year, but they'll still be consistently good. Enough to where you could probably trust on them to make some defensive stops near the end of a game to seal it. Weaknesses, obviously wide receiver. You don't really have a proven playmaker. Bradley Rosner, I would classify as a glass cannon. Trent Penix, maybe you could also classify him in that sense, but he only really had that one big injury last year that kept him out for 4 or 5 weeks, I think. But general offensive production, also a weakness. The whole average points per game last year for NC State, particularly in the second half of the season, was what really was concerning. And it's hard to continue to see that as a red flag when you have a completely new offensive coordinator and quarterback, and you have new guys at wide receiver. So you don't know what the chemistry is going to be. You don't know how the system's going to work. You don't know how all these things are going to gel together, like the chemistry. But it's on there as a weakness because that's been a problem for NC State for the past few years, and that's going to be a theme pretty much for this entire preview as we roll into the schedule. Starting off at UConn, another one of these games where UConn is trying to schedule with the ACC. I wonder if they're making a bid to join the conference. I'm not sure. There have been rumors floating around about that, but as far as today goes, UConn is in the Big East, except for football, because the Big East doesn't have football. They're independent in football. And UConn, they made a bowl game last year. They were definitely improved from where they've been in the past 5 years by making that bowl game. And that being said, I still think that NC State's defense is going to be more consistent. I think the offense will be improved. I think will be a showcase for what Robert Anae and Brennan Armstrong have been working on in the offseason. And I think this will be a win for the Wolfpack. Probably by about 2 touchdowns. It may be close at halftime, but in the second half they'll pull away. So yeah, I think that's a win against UConn. And then you come home and you play Notre Dame. Number 13 Notre Dame, preseason ranked. Notre Dame has won 20-something. I'm not sure about the actual number, but they've won 20-something games against the ACC in a row to this point. So they've definitely got a winning streak going. And I don't think that's ending with this game. If you see my Clemson prediction video, you know that I've picked them to end the streak that Notre Dame has against ACC opponents. I think Sam Hartman is really focused on this NC State game as well as the Clemson game, being the quarterback of Notre Dame now. He wants revenge for what happened last year in Carter Finley, where he lost with Wake Forest, and he wants revenge against Clemson for what happened in Winston-Salem last year. I don't think he will get that revenge in regards to Clemson, but he does get revenge against NC State. So a loss against the Fighting Irish, and the streak continues for a little bit longer. Then you play VMI. VMI is VMI. Not much to say there. That should be a win. If it's not a win, then start looking for a new head coach. Then at Virginia, this is the return of Robert Anae and Brennan Armstrong to their old stomping grounds in Charlottesville. Virginia, as I've said, I'm very sympathetic to what happened to them last season. No one should have to end their season that way. No group should have to go through that experience that they had. But this is going to be an emotional game for the Cavaliers. You know, this is their guy under center from last year coming back to beat them. I think it'll be closer than people think. I almost put this down as a loss for the Wolfpack, but I think Virginia is still in the process of being rebuilt to a contender within the conference. And I think you will get the win just simply because Brennan is motivated enough to show the coaching staff from last year at Virginia how they were using him in the wrong way, and how Coach Anai's system really fits him as a player and his style. And that's really the whole point of the offensive side of this preview, is that Robert Anai's system puts a lot of players in open space with the crossing patterns, the post routes, the wheel routes from the running back, the tight end. It relies a lot on the defensive backs getting confused from all the motion that you see, and it from what we saw in 2021, it really worked for Anai and Armstrong. And that's why you see a lot of excitement around Raleigh for what this pair is going to do for the Wolfpack when it's paired with the defense, or at least the style of defense that they've had pretty consistently at NC State. But moving on, you play Louisville. Louisville, I'm not that high on this year. A lot of people seem to think they'll be middle of the pack for the conference overall. You know, with no more divisions, it's just one conference, kind of like basketball. But I don't really see it. You know, it's an entirely new offensive system there with Jeff Brom, going from kind of a run-heavy offense that Scott Satterfield had to a pocket passer. And I think they'll struggle with that the first year. I think the defense will be good for Louisville. But I don't think they'll put up a whole lot of points. I think this will be a low-scoring game. But NC State edges it out by being able to do more on offense. And then you play Marshall. I think Marshall is a good Group of 5 team. You know, they beat Notre Dame last year in Notre Dame. But I think that put a lot of people on their toes, so to say, about playing Marshall. And once an upset like that happens to a big power team, it takes a while for people to get comfortable playing that team that, you know, had that upset. Like Appalachian State. You know, they played Michigan in 2007 and they beat them in Ann Arbor. And then you didn't see App State have another upset like that until this past year. So that's 15 years in between upsets. And it's not like App State didn't play teams, highly ranked teams. You know, they played Georgia, they played Tennessee, they played Miami, they played, I think they played LSU, and all those teams beat App State. So it's not like this one team is going around upsetting all these people all the time. They have one upset usually, and then teams are like, hey, you don't want to be like Michigan or Notre Dame that got upset by one of these Group of 5 teams. We got to take these guys seriously. And even in the past, NC State's taken Marshall pretty seriously. In the two matchups that they had in the past 5 years, I think the Wolfpack beat them by 20 plus points or something like that. So I think this will be a win against Marshall. I know that they upset Notre Dame last year, but I think people are aware to the fact now that they can be a serious team that if you don't show up, they will make you pay. But NC State is aware of that. And then you go to Duke. Duke, one of the permanent opponents in NC State's schedule for football now. It's Duke, Clemson, and North Carolina. Shame that Wake Forest couldn't get in there. When I do the Wake Forest video, I can elaborate more on exactly how I feel about Wake Forest permanent opponents. But to summarize it now, I don't think they're good. I think the conference really did them dirty with that scenario. But Duke, historically, NC State does pretty well against Duke in football. And I think it'll be a great game. You know, Riley Leonard versus Brennan Armstrong, both kind of dual threat quarterbacks. Defenses are decent to really good. Is what I would rate them. You know, it's a rivalry. It's a nice rivalry in the middle of October. But I think NC State as a program is a little farther ahead than Duke is with its defense, and then pairing that with a good offense. There's more film on Riley Leonard now, so that defenses have some tape to study of him and Elka's offense, and I think that helps NC State win the game. I think, again, there's just more offensive production. The defense makes a few more stops than Duke does, and NC State wins at Duke. And then you get your bye week, and boy, what a time to get your bye week right before the Clemson game for homecoming. And you know, if you've seen my Clemson video, you know what I'm going to say. Yes, in the past 10 years, NC State's only beaten Clemson like twice, but both times have been in Carter Finley Stadium. And with how I expect Clemson's offense to be with this new offensive coordinator, and the struggles that they'll probably have with an entirely new system being put in place. And to be fair, NC State's also putting a completely new system in place. But you saw, you know, Syracuse put in that system in 1 year, and they almost beat Clemson. And Syracuse defense was not the same as NC State's defense. Obviously, with the points given up, 30 or less, NC State was the only team in Division I football to do that. So you're pairing up this offense that's easy to implement in 1 year, because Syracuse did it, and they put up a lot of points, with a defense that, although they won't be probably the same caliber as one that gave up 30 points or less last year, will still be really good with the returning talent they have and the talent that has gotten experience rotating in and out. Everything points. They get the bye week right before the game, and Clemson is coming off of a hard stretch where they have to play at Miami, at NC State, and then I think they have to play Notre Dame. Everything screams upset to me. I'm just being honest. Yeah, Clemson has to play at Miami, at NC State, and then they play Notre Dame. So everything points to upset for me. So I think the Wolfpack beat Clemson again in Carter Finley for the second time in a row. Not 2 years in a row, but the second time in Carter Finley, when the game's played in Carter Finley in a row. And then you play Miami. Tyler Van Dyke gave the Wolfpack problems in 2021. and it was a 1-point loss. It was a very, very close game, very entertaining game. And I think a lot of the coaching staff is still bitter about that one, and they want another shot at Miami, and they do get another shot. And I think this again will be another good quarterback battle between Tyler Van Dyke and Brennan Armstrong. This one, I think, will be a high-scoring game with all the passes that are going to be thrown in this game. But I think, again, right now, I trust NC State's defense more than Miami's defense, particularly, as I said in the Miami video, with the long ball. And if you watched the highlight reel that I showed of Brennan Armstrong with Robert Anae's offense, they like to throw it deep quite a bit when they were together. So I really think that NC State gets the win here against the Hurricanes. So then you go to Wake Forest. Now, Wake Forest, I've said in many videos, is going to have a step back this year. This is going to be a rebuilding year for Wake Forest. But since the turn of the century, NC State only has 2 wins in Winston-Salem against Wake Forest. 2015 and 2001, I believe. So this is a scenario of I'm not going to pick it until it happens. So I think Wake Forest upsets NC State again in Winston-Salem. There's nothing necessarily that points to that being the case, that it's going to happen, other than that fact that I just gave you. But college football is a really weird sport sometimes, and upsets happen. I just picked one, Clemson earlier. They happen. So this is an upset that I'm picking. So then you go and play at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech also, I think, is in a rebuilding phase. But, NC State doesn't have a very good reputation playing late in the year on the road. Last year, they went to Louisville in a very cold game and lost to the Cardinals in a battle of the backups. Malik Cunningham wasn't playing. So I think, once again, I think Virginia Tech beats you and you take another L on the road in the cold mountains of Virginia in November. And then you come back home to play the rivalry game at the end of the year, every year that you play, North Carolina. Drake May last year said some things about NC State that they didn't take too kindly to, and that kind of motivated them, so to say. Although, NC State doesn't really need any more motivation when they play UNC. Playing UNC is enough motivation for NC State. But the Wolfpack beat the Tar Heels last year. And honestly, I think that's what's going to happen again. I think the defense for UNC will be worse than it was last year, which is saying something because they were pretty bad. And the offense for NC State is going to be better. And as I said in the UNC video, I really don't know if that offense is going to perform as well as it did last year with a new offensive coordinator for UNC. And even then, the offense that they had last year was not enough to beat NC State. So everything that I see points to UNC losing again. So I have the Wolfpack at 9-3, That's a really good year for NC State, possibly a 10-win season with the bowl game. But yeah, a 9-3 season. I'd like to thank everyone for watching, everyone who subscribed, and I'll see you in the next video, which will be Pittsburgh.